I'll pass the session to you.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, and welcome everyone. This is going to be a really fun interactive session. We're going to talk about generative AI. We're going to get you really excited about some of the tools that we've got around generative AI. We're going to do some demonstrations. And the great thing is there's going to be no PowerPoint. How cool is that? So you won't see a PowerPoint slide. What you'll see in front of you at the moment is a digital whiteboard, which means I can do some really bad drawing, but also I can switch between that and some demonstrations. So what I want to do first of all is get a little bit of audience interaction. So you'll see on the right-hand side, you have a chat window. And I just want you to let me know where you're based in the world. So I'll start off. My name is Paul Colmer, and I'm based in Brisbane, Australia. So it's my evening currently. I've been training all day, and so I still have energy left for the big day today's 2023. So just in the session chat, just let me know where you're from. And you can give me some feedback on what you'd like to see today. So let's, without further ado, let's move forward. So we're going to talk about generative AI. We are going to show you AWS tools. It is very specific to AWS. Like Jeremy said, I'm a senior technical trainer with Amazon Web Services. Nice to meet you, Cesare. I'm from the UK. Fantastic. So I'm originally from the UK as well. You might detect a little bit of that, but now I'm based in Brisbane. So thanks for introducing yourself. We've got Paulina, wonderful, from Namibia, fantastic. So in Africa, that's awesome. Who's in Europe? Some people in Europe, hopefully. Some people in maybe North America. Sebastian from Amsterdam, fantastic. So keep coming, keep the questions coming in the session chat. I will be as interactive as I can. I'll throw questions out to you. So keep that engagement coming. Thank you so much. So without further ado, I will move on to a little bit about myself. So let me just see if I can work this digital whiteboard. Yeah, look at this. Now, when I said no PowerPoint, I meant it. So this is the closest I get to PowerPoint. So a little bit about me. Work for AWS. I've got a few of the certifications. Machine learning is my passion. Interesting fact about myself. Not sure if you can see that there in the diagram. Jeremy mentioned I did a little bit of comedy. So prior to COVID, I did about 1.5 to 2 years of stand-up comedy. Did that to really stretch my ability as a trainer and presenter. So I might even slip in a few jokes here and there and see what presents in the moment that I can make fun of. But more importantly, I have a little baby. His name is Bear. That's his real name. I have a little baby called Bear. That's the little picture you see here. He's maybe 6 weeks old. I think it's 6 weeks this week. He's so cute. And this is my first child with my current wife, but my third child. So I have 2 other children. James is 10 and Lucy, who's 13 from another marriage. So baby Bear is the latest addition to my family. So I'm doing really well because I've been training all day and I'm still awake at the moment. But it's an absolute honor and privilege to be here presenting to you all today. So let's keep us moving. So let's talk about generative AI. So this session is going to appeal to different people. It's going to appeal to people that know a little bit about AI. It's also going to hopefully appeal to people like data scientists who know a lot about AI. So I'm going to do a series of talks and demos to meet all those different needs. But let's start off with some of the basics. Let's talk about AI, or artificial intelligence. It's a branch of computer science that aims to replicate human cognitive thinking in computers and machines. And what that really means is we want to help computers learn in a similar way that humans do. Now, there's a lot of buzz at the moment about generative AI. Just while I'm talking and describing about generative AI, if you could just pop into the chat some of the generative AI tools that you've been using. So I'm really keen to see what you've been getting stuck into, if any at all. They don't have to be Amazon Web Services. Maybe the Chat GPT, maybe it's Auto GPT, maybe it's Midjourney. Some of you may not know those different components, but just pop them in the chat. I just want to get a feel for what you've been using. So generative AI is a sub-branch of AI, no surprise, and it's concerned with using computers to generate new types of content. As a practicing musician, I studied music many years ago. I did a degree in music. I got very excited by the way in which we can create new music using something called a compositional technique. And generative AI now comes with, if you like, these models that we can train. that give us those compositional techniques. So music is very much a deep passion of mine. If we get time, I'll do a little demo with DeepComposer, which is a AWS tool that can be used to generate music. It's been around for 2 or 3 years. I've got a really good blog post on it. But more importantly, the latest sets of generative AI seem to be around text. So Sebastian, you share some great examples there. I'm not familiar with validated AI. I might have to play with that. But ChatGPT, of course, is taking text prompts and trying to generate new forms of text, maybe answering questions. Maybe it's writing blog posts for you. So I have been known to use the aid of ChatGPT to help me write blog posts and help me write material, which is awesome. DALL-E in particular, which is OpenAI as well as ChatGPT, is for artwork. So you type in some words and you generate some artwork. Music, which I'll show you later in DeepComposer. And the exciting thing for me is videos. Videos are coming. They're not here yet. I'm waiting for text to video where I can create a 4K scene. So I might, for example, record some video around SageMaker, me talking, demonstrating SageMaker, and then I want to have a joke in the middle of it. And the joke is something along the lines of some sort of punchline that's really not funny. And all of a sudden I cut to this tumbleweed for a few minutes, or sorry, a few seconds. Would it be great if I could generate that tumbleweed just by typing, present me some tumbleweed rolling across the screen with just a slight sound of wind? Wouldn't that be great to type it in? And it creates the video for me in 4K, and I could splice that into my video. So I do a lot of social media work, and video is one area that I'm really excited about. So all the models we discussed today are an area of AI called deep learning. So we've talked about AI, generative AI, and then deep learning is how these models work. There's a couple of different ways that deep learning works, but today I'm just going to give you a basic overview. So deep learning is all about creating a model, creating a neural network that consists of interconnected neurons. And really what we're trying to do is replicate the same, if you like, same pattern in the way the brain works. So let me just draw this out for you. This is where I get to show you some of my artistic flair, if I can call it that. So a very simple neural network consists of what we call an input layer. We then may have a number of what we call hidden layers. And so these circles that I'm drawing on the screen, if you like, are a mathematical representation of how the brain works. And so these blue ones here, we're going to call hidden layers. And then we might then have a final neural network at the end, which is our output layer. So in other words, we're going to feed data in via the input neurons. We're going to allow the deep learning model to learn. So it's going to make connections to all the different neurons. But more importantly, there's going to be some sort of function living in each neuron, some sort of mathematical function. And as we train our deep learning model, it will do certain things. So maybe we're going to train it to recognize characters. So character recognition is a very common use case. Or in the case of generative AI, we're going to use this basically deep learning model to produce new content. And so it's a very simple representation here of what a neural network looks like. And they will look different depending on the type of model that you're using. So generative AI is powered by these deep learning models. These models are very large models that are pre-trained on vast amounts of data. And what we mean by pre-trained is that in the machine learning process, let me just quickly write this out for you. So in a machine learning process, we have the concept of model training. And then we have the process of what we call inference. So training a model is what can take time. It can take many days, weeks, sometimes months to train these models. The demonstrations I will do a little bit later are on this second part, inference, which means the training has already happened. So the model has already been pre-trained. And what this means is that it's very fast to run. Inference is very quick. So you'll see that when I run the inference, it takes maybe 15, 20 seconds to run the inference in these models. We can also fine tune these models in the tools that we have, and we call that fine tuning. But that takes time. It needs additional input data, but it allows us to train the model to a particular set of data and make the model more performant to what we're trying to do. So that's a couple of concepts, training and inference. So the focus today is really going to be on that inference piece. Now, these pre-trained models are trained on vast amounts of data, and these models are commonly referred to as foundation models. Not sure if you're familiar with that term. The other term that you'll see, and it's really a subset of the foundation model, is something called a large language model, or LLM. So this is FM, and this is large language model, or LLM. So the models you're familiar with say ChatGPT, are going to be large language models. Thanks, Sebastian. Validator AI basically takes a business idea as input from the user and provides feedback on it. Oh, wow. Okay. I'll have to have a look at that. And I'm assuming Logo AI maybe generates logos for you. Excellent. So today, foundation models, such as the large language models, I've got two examples that I'm going to reference here. We've got GPT 3.5. So that's the model, or one of the models that underpins OpenAI's work with ChatGPT. There's some human interaction in there as well. And the other model as well that we reference, I'm not doing a demo on this today, but another one that you may have heard of is Bloom. There's a lot of these large language models. Both of these are text generation language models. You also then have, this is what is powered, or some of the technology very similar to DALL-E, is using a technique called stable diffusion. So stable diffusion gives us that text to image, and I'll do a specific demo. I'll actually use GPT-2, and I'll use stable diffusion. I've got two separate demos for you. So stability AI, I've created a model called Stable Diffusion, and that's the one we're going to show in SageMaker. SageMaker is our machine learning tool at AWS. So the types of things that GPT 3.5, GPT-2, and Bloom can do, we can look at writing our blog posts. We can use Stable Diffusion to generate images. There are other use cases for these types of models: solving math problems, engaging in dialogue, answering questions based on a document. The size and general purpose nature of these foundation models make them different from traditional machine learning models, which typically perform specific tasks. So we might have a model that analyzes text for sentiment, classifies images, or forecasting trends. That's almost like traditional ML deep learning models. But with generative AI, we're able to ask it questions that it may not have been specifically trained on, and it gives a pretty good answer. So that's some of the uniqueness of the world that we're in. And the great thing that's happened with ChatGPT, of course, is it's exposed it to the world and made it easy and commoditized to use. So today's focus is really to show you how we might do this ourselves from an app perspective under the hood. So you've mentioned a few examples there, DALL-E, some other examples. Midjourney is very good for text to image, very, very high resolution. If you've not seen Midjourney, a really easy way to see some of these things is just go to Twitter. You can follow me, by the way, at Digital Colmer. There's my quick plug. At Digital Colmer. I do a lot of social media work, but what we can do here, let's have a look. Search the hashtag Midjourney, and we can easily find, hopefully, some pictures that pop up. Let's have a look. Latest. There we go. These are generated from Midjourney. Maybe that's not so good, that one. Let me just scroll down. Let's find some better ones. So here we are. It's a good ones. And notice they put in the out, they put the prompt they put in. So large panoramic window with a view of an erupting volcano. And that's what it is. A large panoramic window with a view of an erupting volcano. So that's from a tool called Midjourney, which is very powerful. It runs on Discord. So lots of examples. There's also Chrome extensions now that you can use for generative AI. I'm going to talk about Amazon SageMaker Jumpstart and how we can get started with some of these large language models. I'm also going to show or talk you through Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Code Whisperer. But I'll come back to those in a moment. So let's delve a little deeper and talk about some of the families of models. So we've talked about the LLM, large language model family. You may or may not have heard of some of these models, but there's one called BERT, T5, and of course, the Generative Pre-trained Transformer, or GPT, which everyone has now heard of. It's now famous. BERT and T5, maybe you haven't heard of. But these are different types of models, pre-trained transformer. So this family of large language models can understand and generate human-like text. It's designed to help write new materials such as documents, blog posts, and stories. The pre-trained part means the model has already done most of the learning. So remember up here, we told you that the training has already happened, just over here. And so our demonstration will focus on the inference. Inference is the process of gaining insights from the model. So we need to take a model, we need to massage the data, we then train the model with our data, we then deploy the model into an endpoint, and then we run inferences on that model. And the inference is the quick part where we gain the insights that we need. And so when we're trying to predict text, that's an inference example. When we're trying to generate text to image, we're using an inference as well. So the process of gaining insights from the model based on input. We will demonstrate how deploying GAN inferences from GPT-2 model in Amazon SageMaker Jumpstart in this session. GPT is one of the underlying models in the Chat GPT service, hence the word GPT. Hope that makes sense. Cool. Let's talk about another family. We'll do a little bit of theory, then we'll get straight into the practical. I'm conscious we're at 17 minutes, so I think at 20 minutes I need to jump into the demo for you, but we'll do that. Let's look at the diffusion model family. This is where stable diffusion comes in. So this is our text to image. If I can type today, I'll even write stable diffusion. It's too late for me here. What time is it? 7:20 here, PM. So stable diffusion, used to generate complex images from a simple line of text. Can be used to generate new content for social media posts, promotional material, album covers, anything that requires creative artwork. So I'll show you how that works in SageMaker Jumpstart. It's similar to the techniques used in the OpenAI DALL-E 2 service. Now, another type of network that you probably have not heard of is a generative adversarial network. Let me teach you something a little bit new. We'll dive a little bit deeper on this, just because it's really cool. It's used to create new types of images, text, or music. So in this example, I'm going to talk about music generation. So there's two parts to a generative adversarial network. There's something called a generator. If I can write today, generator. And there's something called, I'm going to call it a discriminator. Let me see if I can write this correctly. It's quite a difficult word to write, discriminator. And so this is part of a neural network, which has two components. The generator creates synthetic music. It makes music up and passes it on to the discriminator. So it's a model that's already been trained, and it does its best to create made up music based on the way it's being trained. It then passes the music through to the discriminator, and the discriminator job is to try and tell whether it's synthesized music, i.e. it's made up, or whether it's real music. And effectively, it establishes a feedback loop between the two. So the generator creates a piece of music, passes it on to the discriminator, and says to the discriminator, what do you think of this? Discriminator goes, nah, I can tell it's fake, and this is why. You need to make it better. The generator has another go at it. And so it goes around in this loop. And the feedback loop is effectively loss, we call that, from a model. And effectively, the model gets better and better until the discriminator can't tell whether it's real or not. It thinks it's real, and then it passes it out as real music. So that's how that particular type of neural network works. It's called a generative adversarial network. So a good analogy for this is to think of the generator as an orchestra and the discriminator as the conductor. And so the orchestra will play the music in front of the conductor and play it the best it can. The conductor will go, whoa, whoa, stop there, stop there. What we need to do, we need to improve this by lifting the emotion at this point, or lifting the volume here, or maybe playing down the volume here. And so the conductor and orchestra have that feedback loop. And so it's a very similar way in which the generator and discriminator work. So that feedback continues until all the music is rehearsed and ready to perform in the orchestra conductor scenario. And in this scenario, the generator and the discriminator go round until the music is good enough to present out. So if we get time, I'll show you the DeepComposer tool, and I'll show you how generative adversarial networks work. And I will show you a link as well to some music I generated quite a few years ago now, a couple of years ago. So let's move on to our demo. First of all, let me log into AWS. So here is a login I've already used. I've got a pre-set up login. So SageMaker is our machine learning service. Let me just jump into here, Amazon SageMaker. I'm not going to show you and talk you through everything you've seen here. Now, before I do the demo, this particular demonstration is based on a blog post that I wrote, was published in May. So where are we now? We're at the end of May, so it's only 2 weeks ago. So if you want to follow along outside of this conference and do the same thing I'm doing, you've got a lovely blog post here that puts it in very simple terms for you. It also lists through some of the prerequisites that you need to have in place. So here we are, generative AI overview, a little bit of what I've talked about today. Some prerequisites here. So follow these prerequisites if you're not familiar with SageMaker. And then we can go straight into the Jumpstart solution. So let's do that now. This is Amazon SageMaker. Basically, you'll have to create a domain, which I've done already. You then go into your domain, and then you'll create a user, and then you simply launch that user. So I go here, launch, and I'm going to launch SageMaker Studio. So Amazon SageMaker, our machine learning tool. SageMaker Studio is our integrated development environment. And so when I click on that link, it will take me to this beautiful, I think it's beautiful, IDE. Lots going on here. Easiest way to drive this IDE is to navigate over here to the left where it says SageMaker Jumpstart. We can go into our models, notebooks, and solutions, and we can actually find a model. So for example, I can search for a text generation model. And you mentioned, I mentioned Bloom earlier. I mentioned GPT, so you can see variants of these different models here. GPT-2 is the one I'm going to demonstrate in a moment. If you're not sure where to start, you can go to Introduction to Text Generation. And there, you need to be a little bit familiar with Python, but there's basic code that you can run here. You don't necessarily need to train the code. You can just run this code. So if you have a little bit of familiarity with code, this is probably something you can do. But let me backtrack a little bit and show you the demo I'm about to perform, which is even simpler. So if we go to SageMaker Jumpstart, what we want to type in here is GPT-2. That's the model I want to play with. And it comes up here with some options. You see it here, it says deployment configuration, security settings, and then deploy. Now, in order for this model to work, and I've already actually pre-deployed it in the environment here just to save a bit of time. It only takes about 5 minutes to deploy this model. It's not a huge model. There are lots of models to choose from. Some models are better than others, but this one was quite quick to spin up. So all you need to do is go into deployment configuration. Just make sure that you're selecting your instance type. So it automatically selects a P3.2x large. Now, trust me, that's a really big, expensive instance, and there aren't many of them. So if you're playing with this, I would suggest a C5.x large or a C5.2x large. It's going to cost you about, I think it's about a 30 to 50 cents per hour to run these because they're quite large instances behind the scenes. And I'll show you how to make sure that you delete these models once you're finished. Basically, so you're going to select probably the C5.x large, which is the instance type. That's the amount of CPU and memory that I want it to run. You're going to give it a name, and then you're going to scroll down here and you're going to click deploy. Now, here's one I prepared earlier. over here. So once I've clicked deploy, it will then spin up what's called an endpoint, which is the actual instance behind the scenes, the actual compute instance that's going to run my machine learning model. It says the endpoint status here is now in service. It will say it's currently spinning it up. It's in progress. Now it's currently in service because I prepared this earlier. And then what I can do is I can go in and open a notebook, and it's going to give me sample code where I can run inference on that model straight away. So I can click on open notebook, and it takes me to this screen. Now you're probably thinking, oh, I don't know anything about Python. You don't need to. This is really, really simple. Okay. So all we need to do now in the SageMaker notebook is I need to do what's called a control enter. I click on the cell and do control enter, and it's going to run that piece of code. The only customization you're going to need to do is this piece here. So this is the text I'm putting in to this GPT-2 model. And what it's going to do is a text prediction model. Based on what I feed it, it's going to predict what the next set of words are going to be. In other words, it's going to create some original content for me. So the text one, today I will talk about generative AI. Generative AI is something. Once upon a time, there were 3 bears. So let's just see what happens, right? So we're going to run that cell, and it's entered the text now into the model. Sorry, into text 1 and text 2 as variables. And now I'm going to run the code that's going to do the magic for us. It's going to query the endpoint, and it's going to ask the large language model that's already deployed on our instance. It's going to generate some new text for us. So you see down here, it's already popped up. It's very quick. Today I will talk about generative AI. Generative AI is, and it's come up with a field-based AI project that tries to use statistical models to make predictions about the behavior of different classes of cognitive systems. And then once upon a time, there were 3 bears. That's the number of bears that lived in the region of Washington's national capital region between the 1940s. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy and paste this into here. While I'm doing that, does anybody want to throw me some input text? What should we run? What should we ask it? It's not so much a question we are asking it. We want it to predict or write a story for us. So how would you want the story to start? So does someone want to type something in for me? I'm going to do number 2. If someone wants to put something in the text, I'll take that, copy and paste it in. To be or not to be. That is the answer, because I'm a comedian. I like to be a bit funny. Let's see what that does. Does anybody else want to have a go in the chat? Still there? I'm trying to make this interactive as possible. Does anyone want to have a go? No? Okay. I love bananas. Bananas. Let's see what happens. So again, we run that first cell. Input our text now. Again, we just do control enter to run that cell. And this is the magic now happening. We're running now against a large language model. And here we go. It's come up with some very interesting things. So input text, I love bananas. I used to think they were so good. I made these a day or 2 ago, and it's come up with a little bit of a recipe. That's interesting, eh? And to be or not to be, that is the answer. On the other hand, to be is to be good. If a man who is good or bad is bad or indifferent, he must also be good or indifferent. And so it goes on. And by tailoring the details here in this particular query, using these advanced features, I can extend the length of the material. I can change the material. I can also use other language models. I particularly use this one, not necessarily because it gives the best text output, but because it's quick to spin up, it's cheap to run, and it's very easy for you to replicate in a blog post. So that's GPT-2. Let's move on to Stable Diffusion. So in this demo, you just search for Stable Diffusion. I think it's Stable Diffusion 2. I can't quite remember actually what I typed in. What did I do before? Yeah, Stable Diffusion Few. So that's the one I'm trying to find. So let's put space 2. There we are. You click on that. Same deal again, deployment configuration. Make sure you choose a smaller instance type. So probably a G5.2x large will be fine. give it a name, scroll down, and click deploy. And when you click, it should endpoint status in progress. It will take, this one will take a little bit longer. It'll take about 15, 20 minutes. That's why I pre-warmed it effectively, and now it's in service. So this is our instance type running here. I've just got one instance running. Then we scroll down, we click to open notebook, and that will open up a Python notebook here. So the same deal as before. I'm going to run the code here. So this is all pre-written for me. I'm just running this code. This is now going to set up the functions I need to query the model. That's now done. You can see it says 8. Now down here is where I want to change the text. So this is going to be text to image. So it sounds like you're all a bit shy, so you don't want to give me an example. Let me do bridge over the Brisbane River in the style of an impressionist artist. Is that right? Oh, impressionist. Let's try that. See what happens. I'm trying to. It's like a style of Monet. That's what I'm trying to do. Let's run that query now. Takes a little bit longer. Takes about maybe 15, 30 seconds. Again, there's a number of advanced features that we can use here to tailor what we're doing. And there's some more advanced code down here. I'm not going to run this code. It gets a little bit more complicated here. I'm just trying to keep this simple. Whoa, that's pretty good. That's one of the best I've seen, actually. And what's remarkable, you probably won't know this, but there is a bridge in Brisbane called the Story Bridge. And you know what? That looks a little bit like the Story Bridge. So it has knowledge, clearly, of Brisbane. That's about the right width of the river, believe it or not. It's not bad, is it? Pretty good. If anyone else wants to give me another one. And also, each image will be different. So that's not a bad image. I think I'm going to take a screenshot of that one. That's really cool. The other ones I did weren't quite as good, but that's one of the best ones I've seen. So let me just make sure I can just get a little screenshot of that and just save it. Because you know what happened after this demo, I'll forget. And this is going to be something to tweet about as well afterwards. Look, what happened to the demo? I've got an awesome image. I can call that bridge. Let me just save that. Now let me just try that again. I'm just going to run the same code. It tells me the title at the top, the words that I used. Oh, here we go. San Francisco Bridge, or a lesser known. There we go. Let's do that then. I love it. Thank you so much, Sebastian. You're getting into this. Should we do it in the style of Picasso this time? Something a bit different. So San Francisco Bridge. Let's make this a bit funny. San Francisco Bridge created by aliens. I'm just trying to make this interesting. Created by aliens over the river in the style of Picasso. So this is prompt engineering. So some important tips around prompt engineering. Try and make it really creative and descriptive. So I should just be able to run this cell and it should just work. If it breaks, it might because I need to redefine my functions above. Let's just try that again. The little star means it's running. I don't know what it's going to produce. Let's hope it's good. If it's not, I'm blaming Sebastian. No, it's my fault, really. I typed it in, didn't I? Interesting. Let's take the created by aliens out. So you can see there's a bit of experimentation here. San Francisco Bridge over the river in the style of, what other artists could we have? Picasso, Jackson Pollock. That'd be funny. That might be quite messy. Let's see what happens there. Let me just get a screenshot of this, actually. It's actually not too bad. It's the trouble, because once you generate these, and by the way, the same prompt, if you use the same prompt, it will give different results. Because it's generative, remember? It's going to give different results. It's not going to be the same. This is what's fun. We could do quite a few versions of these. And if you're using a tool like DALL-E as well, that gives you four versions. Let's just go back and just run this code now. And then we'll keep moving. Something else. There we go. San Francisco Bridge over the river in the style of Jackson Pollock. I love it. Cesare, I will try that. Stormtrooper riding the skateboard as cartoon pick. I love it. Here we go. Here's another one. Well, that's a bit. It's got some knowledge of San Francisco because it knows there's a lot of traffic there, right? I don't know if that's traffic. I don't know what that is really. That's interesting. And there's the bridge there, and it's in the style of Jackson Pollock, so it's a little bit more splash paint type, which is the style. This is what Jackson Pollock would look like. Maybe not quite as organized as this. It's maybe a little bit more random, but it's still pretty good. I don't think the art experts are going to be too impressed because that's yeah. Let's put that bridge straight, and we do one more. Excellent. I love the interaction here, trying these different things. I'm just going to be doing this all day. I can see these responses coming in. Let's have a look. But you see how quick this is to put in and run, and you see the amount of experimentation you need as well. So Stormtrooper riding the skateboard as cartoon pick. Go on, Jeremy. I'll do the I'll do the Formula One with dragons. I think there we go. Look at that. Stormtroopers riding a skateboard as cartoon picks. Thank you very much for that suggestion. I'm saving all these. These are brilliant. These are absolutely brilliant. Who would have thought the conference is so much fun, eh? You just thought maybe I should have a demonstration running at next reInvent. Next, yeah, it's a bit funny, isn't it? A bridge. Oh no, this is Stormtroopers. Stormtroopers. I'll tweet these a bit later. We'll have some fun with them. Formula One race with dragons. My wife loves Formula One, so we'll do that one next. But Jeremy, there you go. Stormtrooper riding a skateboard. And by the way, Jeremy, if you want to take some screenshots of the whole thing, you can as well for whatever you need. Let's try this one. One more. Here we go. And I'll show you some more goodies. This is by far the most interesting part of the demo, I think, is the actual rubber hitting the road, particularly with this stable diffusion. We're currently running these machine learning models. I've been running for a couple of days, so it's cost me a little bit more, but it's probably about, there you go, 30 cents an hour. Formula One race with dragons. Not quite as impressive, but let me just save that. What I'll do, I'll run this one more time because I'm curious to see how different the models can be. Each time they're slightly different. So that's the Formula One. Let's save that one. Formula One. Let's just rerun this model and just see what it comes up with. Because we can generate multiple, we can get hundreds of these and just pick the best one. And that's the point with generative AI. You can generate as many as you want. And the beauty, of course, is that you just pick what you need. It's the same with music. So as musicians, we often want lots of different ideas around music, and then we can generate hundreds of them and pick the right one, pick the one that works. So that's just running now. See, quite different. You see how different that is? Formula One race with dragons. Not sure what that means. Maybe that's dragons in some language. I don't know. A bit random, that one. It's not perfect every time. Anyway, I've just done that off the audience participation here. So as you can see, SageMaker Studio, it's designed for end-to-end machine learning. We can do very advanced things in SageMaker. We can pre-train these models, so we can create data, maybe business data, and feed it into these models to tailor results. We can do anything that a data scientist would require, all the way through to running machine learning models for very simple business reasons. So we've got something called Amazon SageMaker Canvas that lets business analysts, for example, create machine learning models just by dragging and dropping, so no code required. And that's a no-code service. So really what I'm showing you here is it looks complicated, and it can be for data scientists, for developers, but also we have the other end of the scale, keeping things simple for business analysts. And hopefully you can see that this demo is, it's something you can experiment with if you're very advanced. It's something you can do if you're not so advanced, and it will gain you a much deeper insight into how these models work. Awesome. So what you're looking at, this is SageMaker Studio, so design integrated development environment. Jumpstart is the ability to spin up these models very, very quickly. And the other thing I quickly wanted to show you as well, we've been looking very much at generative AI. I know it's generative AI piece, but we can also look, for example, at different solutions. So document understanding, product defect detection. We can look at specific use cases here. Demand forecasting, lung cancer survival prediction. There's a whole range of different corporate credit scoring. So away from generative AI, there's the traditional machine learning type models here as well. We've got a whole range of foundation models here that we've covered. Remember we talked about, we mentioned T5, stable diffusion. Alexa, so the language model that powers Alexa is here. GPT models here, another Bloom, different variants. We then have computer vision models as well. Image classification, object detection, semantic segmentation, and so on. Text models we talked about. We've got tabular models as well. Audio models, I haven't played with these. Text to image, object detection, text classification, you name it, it's in here. There's an awful lot to get. And you can just spin these up. You can view solution. So let's look at product defect detection, and we can launch immediately. And then we can get launch the notebook and start to experiment with the code. Very, very quick. That's why it's called Jumpstart. Very quick for you to get going. So let's just go back to the blog post. So I've just talked you through very quickly the GPT-2 model, which you can do yourself here. This is the model demo, GPT-2. And the other one was stable diffusion. That's all here for you to try. Now, what's really important is to delete these endpoints at the end. So I'm actually going to do that now because I'm finished with these endpoints. I'm not going to use them again. Let's have a look. Where are we here? You can simply scroll down and delete the endpoint, and you won't be charged anymore. So that's now, ignore the errors there. They're actually warnings, they're not errors. They're just telling me that certain artifacts still exist. And I can delete this one here, and that will stop the charges. So as soon as I click delete now, and OK, the endpoints are stopped and the charges stop. So that's really, really important. Cool. Let's quickly look at, should we have a look at DeepComposer? Let's do that. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we've got a bit of time. Let's look at DeepComposer. So this is how we can generate music in AWS. Now, unfortunately, I don't think you'll be able to hear this music, but very quickly, the way that it works is I can go into compositions and I can look at the different compositions. I can create a new composition. Let's do that, create a new composition. Click on start composing. You can see I've been a bit busy in here. I can either play in a piece of music from your See My Trusted Keyboard here, or I can use a track that's included, such as Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And what I can do, it's very simple. I pick my input track now. I click continue. I decide on the type of model I want to use. So transformers, you're a little bit familiar with. That's that's where GPTs come in. They're part of the transformers stack, and this is a transformers model for music. There's a generative adversarial network that I talked about. That's the generator and discriminator model. And then this is another one, convolutional neural network using computer vision. So let's look at a GAN, for example. We can select a model. This is a genre, so I can select a rock, for example. And there's a couple of algorithms I can choose. I'm just going to use the Muse GAN. That's just the type of model that we're choosing. And then we click over here, continue. And it generates this track. Now, unfortunately, you don't have audio plugged into here. So the next best thing that I can do, if I can find the link, where are we? Is it here? Yeah. I'll share you some examples that I created. They're actually created a few years ago. So outside the conference, again, have a little listen. You've got AI generated chords using Muse GAN model in AWS DeepComposer. That's actually not too bad. And this one is a track where I've done a chord progression from one of my tracks called Another World, and then using a transformer technique in DeepComposer, it then understands how that's put together, that first 4 bars, and then generates its own music, generates brand new music. So this is AI generated chords. This is harmonies underneath the melodies. Whereas this one, it's actually generating brand new material using the transformer model. So a couple of examples there. So that's my DeepComposer show and tell. I also have a blog post on that as well. So you can see the date there, 8th of July, 2021. So generative AI is not that new to me. I'm very excited though. It's gone nuts and skyrocketed. Everyone knows about it. But there's a blog post there. Again, it's a demonstration. Something I've done just now, but a little bit more involved. Talks about what generative AI is, but talks about the context of DeepComposer. And it gives you some basics around what the different models do, and then steps you through how you can create your own jazz rock track and shows you how I've done it too. Awesome. Excellent. A couple more things I want to show everybody. How are we doing? We've got some questions. Oh, I love that question, Sebastian. One of the biggest limitations with ChatGPT is that it's trained up to 2021. What is stopping OpenAI from feeding the model real-time data published daily? I don't know. You'd have to ask OpenAI. But what I can do is talk about the general challenges of feeding models. So what you would need to do was you would need to take an existing model and you would need to fine-tune it every so often with new data. Now, the rate at which new data is increasing is exponential. So the challenge with all the data that's coming out and the challenge with how frequently do I update the model results in cost. So I've got to run, for example, you can see I was running instances there. If these instances are costing me, say, $1 an hour, and I need to run a model for maybe 4 or 5 days, you can see that the costs are going to add up, particularly if the amount of data I'm consuming is significant. I've also then got to gather that data somehow. I've got to scrape it from somewhere, and then I've got to feed it into the model. So basically, not sure what's stopping them, but that's one of the challenges of keeping things up to date is the cost of these things. And so they've really done a point in time just to keep their model fairly straightforward. Hope that makes sense, Sebastian. That's sort of my take on things. I'd love to know anyone else's take as well on this session. Wonderful. So keep those questions coming. Now, if this is not exciting enough, it gets even more exciting. It really does. So in my view, Amazon have really, I don't know how to describe it, have really put their heads together and come up with an incredible service that I think is going to change the entire industry, another step change. So if you think ChatGPT was good, I think Bedrock could move another level. And so what Amazon Bedrock is, it's in preview at the moment. It allows you to create an application and send API calls to a serverless service called Amazon Bedrock. Now, when we say serverless, what we mean is that Amazon runs all the infrastructure behind the scenes. So you haven't got to spin up necessarily all the infrastructure, the machine learning compute that you need. All you simply do is you decide on which large language model you want to run inferences against, and AWS will spin those up for you, and then you just make API calls to it. So you saw how very simply I was able to change the text. Well, I can just simply do that from an app with an API call through Amazon Bedrock. And that way, you can, in a very short period of time, build very powerful, very dynamic applications that use generative AI using a simple API call. So you can see that's, for me, a step change. So it means you'll see thousands and thousands of these apps being built, potentially using Amazon Bedrock, producing all this incredible material. So I think it's going to accelerate the whole AI landscape. That's sort of my personal view. So I'm really, really excited with Amazon Bedrock. It's in preview at the moment. It's so new that even I can't get access at the moment. We're prioritizing access for high priority customers that really need the service. And there's a lot of work going in the background. The models that are available, there's only a few models available now. AI21 Labs, Anthropic, Stability AI, but also Amazon Titan, which is Amazon's own model that we use in Amazon itself for various things, check generation, classification, open-ended Q&A. So you'll see Amazon Titan at play on the Amazon retail side of things, I guess. And potentially on the streaming services too. So that's really, really exciting. So very early stages. Once I've got access to the Bedrock, I'll start doing demonstrations of the APIs and how easy it is to write code to interrogate these large language models. So that was only announced in 2 weeks before my blog post went live, which is cool. Now, one more service I want to show you, something called Amazon. So let me just pop these into the chat for you. So this is Bedrock. I said I was going to pack a lot in. Don't disappoint. Let's look at Code Whisperer. So there's been a lot of talk around how great ChatGPT, and it's very good, and other tools at creating code. There's a problem with creating code. What happens if you want to do it for commercial reasons? If you want to use the code in commercial products and you want to maintain it yourself? Well, this is where Code Whisperer comes in. It allows you to build apps faster, more securely, using text prompts. So you tell it what you want to do and it writes the code for you. So there's an example. Description there, and it's come up with this type of code. It's trained on billions of lines of code. So again, it's a pre-trained model and can generate code suggestions ranging from snippets to full functions in real time based on your comments and existing code. Very, very powerful. And you can take the code and use it any way you want for commercial purposes, for whatever purposes. You own that code. It's not AWS's code, it's your code. That's very important. There's also security features. It also makes sure the code is secure. So there's some security scanning capabilities. The security is very important at AWS, and it integrates with various tools there as well. It supports a range of different languages, obviously Python, Java, JavaScript, C#, just to name a few. Again, I haven't got a CAN demo for Code Whisperer, but that's something I'm going to work on, I think. Wonderful. Let's have a look. Do we have any more questions? My pleasure, Sebastian. Absolute pleasure. If copyright images were to be inputted to a stable diffusion AI as an image or text or description to generate a variant, could that be a way to bypass the legal issues? Now, okay, let me tell you my view on this. So I have a little bit of expertise with copyright. I'm not an expert by any means, but I do have a little bit, being a musician. We do a lot of work with copyright because we have to make sure that when we create music, we're not infringing other artists. And if you've been across the latest Ed Sheeran case, it needs to do more than maybe sound a little bit like another person's work of art. You've actually got to prove that you've plagiarized that work of art. So if you're able to describe how you're able to create it from first principles, which Ed Sheeran, I believe, did in his case, then it becomes less of an issue. And it's the same here. So in theory, if you take copyright images and feed them into any sort of machine learning model, the outputs will be very different from the images that were inputted. Just like if you looked at copyright images and took inspiration from those and created something new. So my view is I don't think that would have an issue in a legal court, but there are some test cases coming in to see what the outcomes of those things are. So these are things to be aware of when you're using these models. I would always recommend using images that are copyright cleared. You don't want to be taking, I don't believe, other people's work and putting it through a model at this stage. You want to be very careful, I think, is the way I position things at the moment. So, for example, I wouldn't be feeding in commercial music into music models, for example, to generate new music. I'd be feeding my own music in, for example, because I own the rights to it. Hope that makes sense. That's a really tricky question. I get a lot of questions on copyright. By the way, copyright is very complex. And it's a lot more than just copying stuff. It's around really proving that somebody else intended to plagiarize and steal your IP effectively. Hope that helps. Wonderful. By the way, keep these questions coming. I am here to serve you, as always. Now, let's just look one more thing. Let me pop this in the chat. It's a great place to look out for all generative AI announcements at AWS. It's the machine learning blog, and it has the category there, generative AI, so it's got a tag there. And if you see, we've been quite busy. I'm not going to go through all the older posts. We've got Stable Diffusion demo there, announcing some new tools. Oh, so that's the Bedrock tool. There's other tools, but Bedrock is the key one. This is the one that I wrote, showing off now. Generative AI. My older deep learning ones further back. And if we look, for example, what was released only a few days ago, an image-to-speech generative AI application. So the use case for this is a disabled application. So people that cannot see properly or maybe have impaired vision, we can use this image-to-speech. So the speech effectively describes what the image looks like to someone that is blind or vision impaired. So a really good article there to have a look at. Excellent. Wonderful. Couple more things, and then I think we'll wrap up. Often people ask me, well, Paul, you've got all these lovely language models. Where do I start? So this is for the more advanced of you. You could start here at the Stanford EDU, Helm. Helm is a language model wheel for steering a ship. In other words, it starts to help you understand the characteristics around all these different models. You see there some of the partners that we were using with Bedrock, Anthropic, AI21 Labs, Cohere. There's quite a few other companies here as well. And so if you want to start to understand these models, you see the different models down here. I can click on one. Let's pick one. Let's pick the Cohere extra large model. And you'll see here there's different variants of those. You can see access is limited. Some of it's open source. So that's a place to start. Again, if you're a data scientist, and how do you get your hands around these models? I didn't define the word large, but large language models, you can see 178 billion parameters, 7.5 billion parameters. Anything over 1 billion parameters is considered a large language model. And you can see the B stands for billion. It used to be million, but there aren't many that are left with me. There you go, 410. That's a small one. 500 million, that one. That's a small one. So large, I tend to typify as anything over 1 billion. And probably in a month's time, it will be 10 billion because it's large. It's just changing so fast. Wonderful. Do I have any more questions? I've been given a license to run for an hour and a half, but I feel like the short, sharp demonstrations probably work better. So we're almost at time. Let me just check I haven't missed any of the comments. Let's have a look. What have we got? We've got Cesare. It was actually my first glimpse into the AWS world. It looks really interesting. Yeah, I think sometimes SageMaker is the world's best kept secret. So it was really my aim today to help people understand a little bit more about SageMaker and a little bit more about Amazon and what we're doing. But we're definitely working very hard in this area. It's just that our tools are a little bit different. They're designed for developers. They're not designed for the everyday person. However, these demos can be, you can gain value from these demos if you so wish. Wonderful. I think we're at time. So I make this 7:58 my time, which I think is 11:58 if you're in Amsterdam. Thank you so much. Thank you, John. It is cool. Yeah. We'll be glad to have another go at the session. Absolutely. You give that a go. Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's been wonderful talking about generative AI. Thank you so much, John. My pleasure.
Thank you, Paul, for this interactive demo session about generative AI. Personally, I find this session extremely interesting. At least we get to see how generative AI works with SageMaker. And now at least I know I can become an artist even if I don't know how to draw.
Absolutely right. And just for everyone else, I've just popped the LinkedIn link. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can message me. You can find me on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram. You can find me everywhere. Just Google my name. I'm all over the place. So, but great to reach out to me if you have any questions. And thank you so much, Jeremy, for inviting me to this fantastic conference. And everybody enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again, Paul. I hope to see you next year again in Big Data Days 2024.
I hope so too. I think this is my third time, I think. The big data. I think it's 30 years. I've lost. Yeah, so it'll be fourth next year. So I'm looking forward to it. So again, I've got to up my game. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the applause. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So for the rest of you, if you're still in this session, so we do have another session that will be starting soon, which is in track 1. The title of the session is Role of Big Data Analytics in Enhancing Organizational Performance. You wouldn't want to miss this session. I promise you, something that's very interesting. So do join in, and I'll see you there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Paul.